We've got a blockbuster show in store for you today, Habs fans. We're going to introduce you to the 2023 draft class. I'm going to grade each of those picks. I'm going to grade Kent Hughes and the Habs draft overall. Oh, and I'm going to have a chat about what I think about that Alex Newhook acquisition. All coming up on Habs Hockey Report. It's been a pretty big week in terms of Habs news, reactions, and everything surrounding the trade that led up to the 2023 draft, and then the draft itself, that number 5 overall pick, and all the other selections that Kent Hughes and company made in Nashville this week. Today, I'm going to give you a quick rundown of every player that the Habs selected at the draft this week. I'm going to grade each of those picks, and then I'm going to give the Canadiens an overall draft grade, and I'm going to talk about that Alex Newhook trade that was made prior to the draft and give you my grade on that as well. Kicking things off with the first round, after Connor Bedard was selected, everyone then really sat up to pay attention because we've talked about it for weeks that it was very unknown as to how 2 through probably 5, 6, or 7 would go. But Anaheim kind of set the tone for the night when they didn't go with Adam Fantilli at number 2 overall, and instead Fantilli fell to number 3, and things kind of went completely upside down after that. Things happening not the way experts, fans, analysts really expected. And that brings us to pick number 5 for the Montreal Canadiens. There was a lot of speculation leading up to the draft that perhaps Kent Hughes would either try to trade up or he would trade down with a team like the Philadelphia Flyers or the Washington Capitals, because those two teams, it was well known that those two teams were very much after Matvei Michkov, who was projected to possibly fall to the Canadiens at number 5. Well, Kent Hughes did none of those things. He made the 5th overall selection, and he did not choose the Russian, who is what some say a big unknown and who will play in the KHL for the next 3 years. He instead selected the first defenseman of the draft, the highest that an Austrian defenseman has ever been selected at the NHL draft, and that was David Reinbacher. Now, David Reinbacher is a right-handed defenseman. He's 6'2", 187 pounds. He plays in the Swiss National League for Cloton, putting up 22 points in 46 games played for Cloton last year. This pick certainly was controversial. Kent Hughes was well documented just a week prior to the draft, even earlier in the week, saying that they would draft best player available at this position, even if the player that they were targeting was not on the board. And many people see this pick as being drafting for need instead of drafting best player available. Why do I say that? Well, because after the pick was made, Kent Hughes made the comment that we like that he's a right-handed defenseman. If he was left-handed, we probably would have cooled on him, but because we don't have enough right-handed depth in the organization, this was the player that was at the top of our list. This was the player for us who was the best player available over the forwards who were there. And when I say controversial, I took to Twitter immediately and asked this question to my followers. So tell me, Habs fans, how's everyone feeling about Montreal selecting David Reinbacher at 5th overall? There were some who were okay with it. Lyle Boylan said, I'm fine with it. Montreal knows what it's doing. Okay. Captain Kirk, Slapshot3131 says, I like it because Hudson, meaning Lane Hudson, is going to need a good passer and bigger body to help on defense. And Tony Soros Rex says Adam Nicholas will make it good. He's obviously got faith in the player development department. There were some who replied with appropriate gifts, who were basically kind of all in the category. We had Rene Carl, my good friend Rene Carl, saying, I guess we'll see what happens from Schitt's Creek. Larry David made an appearance, courtesy of Jan Lafreniere, and Jungle Beast with a little bit of Al Bundy indifference. But there were some very strong opinions on the I don't like this pick side. Rosalind, who can always be counted on for a strong opinion, says, I never heard of him. I don't care. And I thought we axed Timmins and Bergie for not picking best player available, but here we go again. I suppose this will take another 9 years. I give it 2 before this kid is dealt for picks and future considerations BS. Pretty strong opinion there. We have Savage saying another wasted pick, just like the KK pick, took a player to fill a role instead of the best player available. Then we have Jax saying the rose-colored glasses have been removed when it comes to Gorton and Hughes. This draft had an abundance of elite forwards and they chose defense. It's like they're allergic to elite offense. Drafting in the first round is a massive weakness in this organization. I first of all want to thank everyone who did reply on Twitter. That is just a small sampling. And if you check out the Canadiens Connection podcast with Rick Stevens and Michael Spinella Monday here on the YouTube channel, they are going to read off some of additional pretty colorful comments that I also received as well. They're going to read some more of those on their show, so you want to be sure to check that out. But really, it does come down to there was a lot of feedback and a lot of people feeling that, it was well known that this draft is one of the deepest drafts in terms of talent that we've seen in years. And there was a bevy of elite forward talent available at 5th overall. And for Kent Hughes to choose to go with defense because he felt that he and the organization felt that it filled a role, it filled a need that the organization made instead of trying to take a top tier offensive forward. That didn't sit well with a lot of fans. And I don't know how well it sits with me yet either. I have 2 grades for this pick. For the player, for David Reinbacher, I give the player an A-. I think this could absolutely turn out to be a good player in the organization, someone who could bring a lot of strength to the back end with Lane Hutson, Caden Gooley, Jordan Harris, Justin Barron. That's starting to be shaping up to be what could be a nice young core down the road. So as far as the player is concerned, I like the player, but for the draft selection, the Habs picking him at 5th, I'm going to give that pick a B- because he left a lot of talent sitting right there on the table. And I'm not saying that he should have taken Matvei Michkov either. I'm not suggesting that at all. There were other choices to get a top talent forward at number 5 overall that I would have liked to have seen the Habs go after. Now, later in the show, we are going to talk about the Alex Newhook trade. And I'll just reference it now by saying that left since the Habs no longer had their 2nd pick in the first round at 31, and they also didn't have their 37th overall pick, it meant that the Habs didn't draft for 2 full rounds. They had to wait for 64 more selections before they could draft again. As predicted, goaltenders started flying off the board pretty early in the 2nd round. Goaltending is a need that Montreal has. They are definitely in need of a new crop of goaltenders. And unfortunately, since they didn't have that 2nd round pick available to them, a lot of the top end goaltenders went off the board pretty early in the 2nd round. So it wasn't necessarily surprising then when it came to the 3rd round and they were able to take their next selection, their 2nd of the night, at 69th overall in round 3, that they did take a goaltender. His name is Jacob Fowler. He catches left. He's 6'2", 201 pounds. He plays for the Youngstown Phantoms in the USHL. Martin Lapointe, who's the director of player personnel and amateur scouting, said about him afterwards, Jacob is such a competitor. He's comfortable in his body and agile. Jacob, with a great quote in his media availability, says, I think my game's not very sexy. I just stop the puck. So he's got a big personality. He's got some roots from Montreal. His aunt went to McGill. His family has some roots in Quebec and the Montreal area, so I'm sure that was attractive as well for the Canadiens. There's going to be things that he's going to need to work on. He's looks like his conditioning could be worked on just by looking at him. He's going to play in the NCAA. He's going to Boston College, and he said, there's not going to be an 18-year-old goaltender in Montreal in the NHL, so he says he's going to go overcook himself a little bit in college and then get ready to be an NHL player. So we'll see how that goes. For this pick, I'm going to give this a B. Jacob Fowler, there were definitely better goaltenders available, but since Kent Hughes didn't have a second round selection, he was unable to target any of those. So I think Jacob Fowler is a decent selection for a goaltender, and we'll just have to see if he can get his conditioning under control once he heads to the NCAA program, and we'll see how he does with a more competitive environment. The Habs then selected 101st overall in the fourth round, and here they went for the PR story. Florian Xhekaj was selected, a forward who shoots a left-handed shot at 6'2", 185, plays for the Hamilton Bulldogs, who are now currently the Brantford Bulldogs in the OHL. And if that name sounds familiar, well, of course, it's because it is the younger brother of Arber Xhekaj. And so the Xhekaj brothers are both now part of the Montreal Canadiens organization. This one, to me, I'm grading this selection a C, and it is not anything to do personally with Florian Xhekaj. Florian Xhekaj, to take him as the Canadiens had 3 picks in the fourth round. This was the first of 3 picks in the fourth round, and they went with a guy who Central Scouting had way down in the ranks. We're talking like a lot later, at least 50, 60, 70. Some rankings even had him in the 200s. This was not a player that they needed to go after because there was going to be a lot of competition for him. And instead, I believe that they used this 101st overall selection for the PR story. In fact, the Bulldogs, his team, even said in a tweet when they were celebrating it, the story writes itself. And we know the Canadiens love a good PR story, and everyone does. They're human interest stories. They make things fun. It's great to have 2 brothers together in the organization. I think they probably could have waited a little farther in the draft to get him. They could have even used the third selection of theirs in the fourth round to get him if that's what they wanted to do. Again, I don't feel like they were maximizing what they had available to them by taking him at 101. And so that's why I give this pick just a C. The second selection they made in the fourth round, just 9 picks later at 110, was a defenseman, Bogdan Konyushkov. He's a right-handed shot again, so there's another right-handed D for you. He's small, though, 5'11", 176, plays for Torpedo in the KHL. I'm giving this a solid B as well. Defenseman, right-handed shot, that's good to have within the organization. Playing in the KHL it's a competitive league. That means he's playing against men. He's going to get good experience doing that. Don't love the size. That's why he's getting a B. Maybe leaning towards a B- because he's small. He's 5'11", and you want some size on that back end for the Canadiens on the blue line. So we'll see how Bogdan shapes out. I should also mention that Konyushkov is 20 years old. So this is someone who's a bit of an overager in the draft. It means he's been passed on before. He's an older draft prospect, and this is a pattern you're going to see in this year's draft with the Canadiens, that they took more than one overager, which is a little curious in my opinion. We said the Canadiens are in need of goaltenders, and apparently they were aware of that as well, going for quantity in this draft. With their third selection in the fourth round at 128th overall, they selected Quentin Miller, a left-catching goaltender from the Q. Actually, he plays in the Q for the Quebec Remparts. He is at least a decent size, 6'3", 181. The Quebec Remparts, we know, had a very successful season. Quentin Miller, however, is the backup goaltender for the Quebec Remparts, and it's why he's going to get, for me, a C+. We're bordering B- C+ here because, again, yes, he was with Quebec. They did a tremendous thing this year, and he performed admirably. He had 20 games with a 14-4 record, a 211 goals against, and a 911 save percentage. So those are admirable numbers at the Q level, but he didn't make a single appearance in the playoffs. The starting goaltender for the Quebec Remparts took all of the heavy workload for the playoffs. The thing that leans me a little more towards giving this one a B- over the C+ is that goaltending pro scout Vincent Riondo likes this guy. And Vinny Riondo has a very keen eye for scouting goaltenders. We've had a great working relationship with Mr. Riondo over the years here at Rocket Sports. We've had a lot of conversations with him, and Marty Lapointe said, quote, Vincent Riondo adores him, meaning Quentin Miller. He thinks that he has good abilities and is a student of the game. So that evaluation from Vincent Riondo alone puts him more into the B- to the B minus category for me, because I trust what Vincent Riondo sees when he scouts a goaltender. Moving on to the 5th round at 133rd overall, back to a forward. This is a left winger by the name of Sam Harris. However, another smaller in stature player, just 5'11", 185, plays for the Sioux Falls Stampede in the USHL. The USHL, of course, has a tremendous program. And I'm giving this one a solid B+ as far as the pick. Sam last year had 30 goals for 56 points in 56 games. He's got a knack for putting the puck into the back of the net, and he's committed to the University of Denver in the NCAA program for this coming fall. Denver has a tremendous hockey program, just like Boston College does for Jacob Fowler. And I think Sam Harris is going to get a lot of really good experience at Denver playing in the NCAA. So I like this pick and where it was, round 5, 133rd overall. So I'm giving this one a B+. Third time's a charm, right? Let's go for the third goaltender that the Habs selected in this year's draft, selecting him in round 5 at 144th overall. This is Yevgeni Volokhin, also a left-handed catching goaltender. Also good size on him as well. He's 6'3", 168. He probably needs to fill out that frame a bit more. Plays for Ugri in the MHL. This pick, I'm going to sit with a C on this, simply because I don't know that there's a lot known about him yet. The Russian, they've seen a lot of video on him. It's not like they could really go and watch him this year because of geopolitical circumstances. So they think that he's fast and athletic. They say that he's got good abilities. Last year, he's just 18. He played in 31 games last year, had a 26-3 record with a 212 goals against and a 927 save percentage. So those are decent numbers. I'd like to see what he's going to do once he gets into some more competitive action, but he's got good size. He'll obviously need to build some size onto that. He's got good height. He's going to need to put some size onto that frame, and if he can continue with production like that, the Canadiens took 3 goaltenders. One of them, I think, has some potential in Jacob Fowler. I'm not so sure about the other 2, so we'll see how all that works out. Going to give a borderline C+, B- to their 6th round selection at 165th overall. That's Filip Eriksson, a center from Sweden. Shoots left. He stands at 6 foot, 172 pounds. He plays in the SHL, but last year he only played 2 games because he got injured. He's 18, only played 2 games last year. So he's going to play in the SHL next year. They say that he's got a good hockey mind. He's a playmaker, very smart on the ice. We know that's one thing that you can't necessarily teach is hockey IQ. So I have my fingers crossed that he'll do well. The SHL is a very good league for young forwards to develop in, so we'll have to keep an eye on this prospect next year and see how he does in a year where he's healthy and can actually produce and give us some games to evaluate him on. So he's just a borderline B, C kind of grade for me. Last but not least, you've got Luke Mittelstadt in the 7th round, 197th overall. Does that name sound familiar? Well, it certainly should, because he is the younger brother of Casey Mittelstadt with the Buffalo Sabres. He is a defenseman, smaller, again, 5'11", 174, plays for the University of Minnesota in the NCAA. That is where he is off to. I like this selection. In the 7th round, this is where you do something a little out of the box. This is where you do kind of the feel-good story. I wouldn't have minded if this is where they had selected Florian Xhekaj. But since that feel-good story was already off the books, I like Luke Mittelstadt. This is another overager. Luke Mittelstadt is 20. So while I'm not exactly thrilled with the amount of overagers that Montreal selected in this draft, I like that there is the family connection with Casey Mittelstadt. He actually put up some points in the A last year as a defenseman. He had 21 points, which is not too shabby. Marty Lapointe says that he's good at moving the puck, which is something that we always want to see, a puck-moving defenseman. That is something the Habs could never have too much of. And I think that, for a guy who's obviously been passed over in the draft a couple of times, playing in the NCAA for the University of Minnesota, again, very competitive. I like this pick. I think it's a good pick for the 7th round. So what is my overall grade for Kent Hughes and the Montreal Canadiens at the 2023 draft? To tell you that, I kind of also have to talk about the trade that happened before the draft, and that was the acquisition of Alex Newhook from the Colorado Avalanche in exchange for picks number 31 and 37 at this week's draft, as well as defenseman Gianni Fairbrother. This, just like my David Reinbacher grading, is going to have two different grades. First, I'm going to grade the player they acquired, Alex Newhook. We know that this is what Kent Hughes is hoping to be, a Kirby Dach gamble 2.0. He took a gamble, traded for Kirby Dach at last year's draft when Kirby Dach's value was a bit low, and it paid off. He's hit the money with Kirby Dach. Kirby Dach has definitely performed better this year, and he's obviously hoping that he's gonna find gold again. Alex Newhook with hopefully some untapped potential for what we would hope to see. As far as Alex Newhook goes himself, the player, I like the player. Alex Newhook has a lot of potential. I give the player himself, getting a player like Alex Newhook, absolutely, I'm giving him a B. He's not getting a B+ or an A right now because I have to wait to see if he's going to be able to do what Kirby Dach has done. Is he going to break out this season? Is a change of scenery and some different coaching, different teammates, is that going to be the thing that Alex Newhook needs to break out? So that's why I'm giving the player a B, but I'm hopeful that this will work out like it did with Kirby Dach. Kent Hughes even said, is he a second line center? Is he a third line center? They said that's yet to be determined. We don't know. He's going to have to come and show us what he has the capability of doing. What is his ceiling? So we'll see what kind of role he's going to fill. I do not mind at all the trade to get Alex Newhook. I think acquiring Alex Newhook, that's a solid B for me. The overall trade, however, meaning what you got compared with for what you paid, I have to give this trade a D. I'm sorry, but I do, because I think he way overpaid for Alex Newhook. Why? Gianni Fairbrother, I actually think is an okay part of the deal. Gianni Fairbrother has had some unfortunate, he's had some injuries and so forth. He hasn't gotten the start that he really needed to have in the Canadian system. And with the logjam that's going to start happening for prospects on the back end in Laval, I think a fresh start is probably best for Gianni Fairbrother, and we wish him well. I do not like giving away the 31st and 37th overall selections. In one of the deepest drafts known in the last handful of years, probably the last 6 or 7 years, the Canadiens had 3 picks in the top 37, 2 first-round picks and an early second. They could have that could have been game-changing for the future of the organization in terms of what you could have done with those picks and who you could have selected. Namely, being second round, you could have gotten the only player, the only goaltender who was not available anymore at 37 was Gajan. That meant Canadiens could have had Hrabal. Canadiens could have had Augustine. The Canadiens could have had Bjarnason. There were options for goaltender for a really big deal goaltending prospect. Not only was this draft very deep in talent overall, this draft had one of the deepest goaltending pools. And unfortunately, because Kent Hughes gave away that 31st and 37th overall pick, they had to wait until the 3rd round. They got Jacob Fowler. Fingers crossed that he can become what they need him to become. But there were great opportunities for them if they had maintained that 2nd overall selection, or having given it away, if he had done a different trade, maybe gotten rid of a couple of those 4th round picks and gotten himself back into the 2nd round. You could almost live with giving away one or the other, the 31st or the 37th. Giving away both, to me, was just too much. And so that's why overall, because of what you paid and what you ended up not being able to do at the draft, I give that trade a D. I hope I get proven wrong. I hope that everything works out. I hope all the chips fall in place, and I hope Alex Newhook just takes off, and I hope the goaltender that they were able to get takes off. I hope I'm wrong. I always hope that I'm just eating my words in a few years. But on the surface, my immediate reaction, not my favorite trade. So you've heard what I think. I want to know what you think. I want to know what you think about David Reinbacher going at number 5 overall. I want to know what you think about the Alex Newhook trade, both in the player and what Kent Hughes had to give up to get him. And I want to know overall how you feel the Canadiens performed at this year's 2023 NHL Draft. Do you like the picks? Do you not like the picks? How did you think this performance by Kent Hughes, Jeff Gorton and company went down? Leave those answers in the comment section down below. And hey, if you enjoy this kind of commentary and content regarding the Montreal Canadiens, Habs prospects, then if you haven't done so already, just take a second and tap that subscribe button, hit the like button. Also tap that notification bell so that you don't miss an episode of anything we have for you here on the channel. And most importantly, also hit that share button and just share this video on your favorite social media platform. There is a lot more action coming this summer. Before you know it, just like that, we snap our fingers and free agency is going to be here. And so you can bet that next week we are going to break down any moves that Kent Hughes happens to make once free agency opens over the weekend. Maybe there's some trades on the way as well. You never know. One can hope. One can hope. Need some more Canadiens-related content in the meantime? Well, then I invite you to check out the most recent episode of Habs Hockey Report if you happen to miss it. And I'll meet you back here again next week to talk about free agency right here on Habs Hockey Report.